Hello and welcome to Movies We Dig, the podcast about film, antiquity, and everything in between. I'm Elijah Fleming.
I'm Colin McCormick.
And I'm Christy Vogler.
And today's episode returns to our look at archaeology and popular media with La Chimera, which is a 2023 film written and directed by Alice, or I guess Alice Rohrwacher, and it stars Josh O'Connor as a British archaeologist-turned-tombarolo, along with Isabella Rossellini, Alba Rohrwacher, Carol Duarchi, and Vincenzo Nemolato appearing in supporting roles. I'm super intrigued by this, and I know there's been a lot of reception sort of in the classical space talking about this movie, and I just watched it this afternoon, and I think, Colin, you did too. So I did too.
Literally just finished it like not 10 minutes ago.
We all procrastinated our homework over summer break.
I was at a wedding all weekend. I can't.
That's fair.
I couldn't do it.
I didn't have a good excuse. I was just lazy.
Well, who wants to start on their feelings about La Chimera?
I'll go first because I think I'm the newest, because I know you and Christy both, I think, kind of are coming at this from an AIA paper.
A Camless paper.
A Camless, yeah.
And so...
And it's been on my radar for a long time. Like, I was excited. It's on Hulu, y'all, so...
Yeah, or Disney. I just watched it on Disney. And nice. So, I definitely recommend watching it. I would say I dig it. I like it's kind of been on my radar for a minute, and it's a little bit of a movie that, like, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like a quote unquote homework movie, where a movie you're like, I should see this.
Yeah.
Because it's, good or important or critically acclaimed, but you just kind of like, it's not a movie that you just like flip on and you're like, I'm going to be in for a 2-hour intense sort of surrealist Italian period piece about tomb raiding and Etruscan artifacts. So it's hovered in my background for the longest time until we were just like, we needed another movie to cover. And we're like, why not this one? We've been talking about it forever. Let's come back to it. And yeah, I generally dig it, despite it being a quote unquote homework movie. I think it's good. And I also appreciated that, not to be rude, but like a lot of the things we cover on this show are kind of, well, they're crap, right? Like it's slop that, some big studio slop that you shovel out and we eat it up like little piggies. And so this is like just for the sake of it being such a departure from the films we kind of usually talk about. I also appreciated that as well. And I think, is this the second or third time we've reviewed something with Isabella Rossellini in it?
She's like popped up quite a lot.
Yeah. I think it's the third, because she's in this. She was in The Return.
Uh-huh.
Makes
sense.
She
was in the TV Odyssey movie.
Also makes sense. Yeah.
With the Armando Santi one. Yep. So I think she's in our 3-timers club, which we should really start compiling lists.
They're all very old too, apparently. Although Isabella.
What do they say to there's that one part, they're like, how do you feel? And she's like, vecchia.
She's just like, I love Flora.
She definitely, like Isabella Rossellini, they feel like they wheeled her in for like, 2 scenes, but
they wheeled her in. She explained how one leg is good, the other one not so good. It was just like quintessential old Italian woman that I have a very soft spot for.
I feel like I've met Flora, right? Like I know that person.
Yeah,
still,
for sure.
Still carrying the torch for her granddaughter's ex.
Yes.
Doesn't surprise, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
For a woman who had no sons, and this appears to be the closest one to one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Christy.
Okay, yeah. I fucking love this movie. I enjoyed it so much. And I think it's a little telling that it felt slow in the same way that Return did. And apparently that's what I need in my life right now. I need slow, a little weird, a little dark, and just
starring Isabella Rossellini.
Isabella Rossellini.
The thing is like I texted you guys like, this is the most Italian movie I've ever seen. And when I say Italian, like I think most people who haven't been to the countryside of Italy and lived in the countryside of Italy, that like this will feel dated. It will feel like the 1980s. As someone who has worked in the Italian countryside in Sicily for many years, a lot has not changed in 40 years in terms of that setting. Like it felt homey to me the whole time. Like I was so enjoying it for that regard. Like this is what it is to live and work amongst the people of Italy on these ancient sites, whether or not it's real archaeology. Like this is obviously antiquities looting. But this felt the most real and grounded movie about people's relationships with antiquities that I think we've ever covered. Like the dig kind of close, like this one just nailed it for me. So like I love this movie. Could not recommend it enough if you're like strangely into like Italian countryside. It's a little archaeology, a little supernatural, all good. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree. You guys, I really enjoyed this movie. It was pretty awesome. I don't think it needed to be 2 hours long.
I think it could have shedded, I think, maybe 20 to 30 minutes off the back end. But
yeah, and I know that it is that kind of slow, really intense storytelling, but I'm still a fast movie kind of girl.
But what moment would you cut? That's like what I agree with you on that front.
Yeah. So I kind of thought we're getting ahead to the ending. And also for listeners, we should say we're going to be getting into spoilers, I think, pretty quick.
So many spoilers. Yeah.
So many spoilers.
Like, to me, I really thought like after he, again, spoiler, yeets the head into Lake Como or wherever they were.
The Tyrian Sea.
Yeah. And he's back on the train and we basically get the, like, we are back where we started. He's on the train. He sees the same people. He's in the same shot. It's sort of a mirror image. I was like, this feels like the end of the movie. And then it goes on for like another 30 minutes with he kind of reunites with Italia but then doesn't, then gets buried. And it's sort of like, to me, the narrative sort of got lost a little thrust after that point. Like you could have maybe consolidated that back 30 minutes, I think could have been like a back 10 of like an epilogue rather than like a fifth act. But
that's fair. I think
that's just me.
I think that's what hints at like the question you had about the title of the film, La Chimera, and what do they actually mean by that? Because like the Chimera is a monster a lot of people will recognize from Greek mythology. But in this case, they're kind of referencing more as like these. It's pursuing something fantastical. In this case, it's pursuing Arthur's visions that translate into finding the dead, but finding the tombs of the dead, which is very lucrative when you're dealing in antiquities.
And it maybe is where I kind of thought it was a reference to, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't, is that the most iconic and famous sort of piece of Etruscan artwork, I would say, is a bronze chimera sculpture. That you can see. I think Christy's holding up a book.
I don't remember if I don't think are these no, not quite right.
Something else. Yeah.
But they're somewhere along the lines.
There's a very famous bronze of a Etruscan bronze of a chimera that I thought was gonna I thought it was gonna be more literal, like they were gonna actually find like a bronze chimera sculpture or something. I didn't think of it in that. This is me being a dum-dum. But yeah, like Christy, I think like the sense of like things are being joined together, right? That's the kind of like what a chimera is. It's like it's part, lion, part goat, part snake. And the idea, and now it's just kind of, it's a shorthand for any kind of like grafting of things onto other things.
But it's also something that doesn't exist, right? It's like, it's that continuous search for something or the attempt to pull things together, but you never actually quite get there in the end.
Yes. Yeah. Which there's the recurring sort of motif of the thread of like he keeps having these visions of Benjamina, and she's got this thread that's kind of coming off her dress and trailing, and it goes down into the earth. And then at the end we get actually that's like really the ring composition. So it is almost like we would say like chiasmatic, right? It's like A, B, B, A in that sense, because you have like vision, train, vision, and then the last shot of the film is him coming out of the ground where the thread was stuck before in the first vision. And if listeners, if none of that made any sense, just go watch the movie.
It's a very artsy film, but you'll get it when you watch it. Well, and I think that's kind of like what Italia presents in that moment is like she is the more grounded option, right? Like she is, you stop pursuing the high of finding antiquities. You help us build this commune and just
she being Italia, his sort of his love interest
interest of sorts.
Viva
companion. and like she present, an option of like just live or, and he chooses to go and pursue the fantastical, to continue to pursue these visions of the afterlife, to pursue the anima of the woman who he loved and is no longer amongst us. And that's the end result. And I don't know, like you probably could cut that in some way, but like, that felt kind of the point of the movie at the same time in terms of its message.
I do kind of concede. I think you are right on that front. So I guess we can do, how do we want to go through this? Should we go through plot wise.
Yeah, we should probably get
a
little more plot at this point and just.
So, I mean, I think maybe a shorter plot summary will probably do this movie better service. But basically, it follows an English sort of archaeologist turned tomb raider or tombarolo, who at the beginning of the film, he's just gotten out of jail. He reunites with his old tomb robbing buddies. He gets back into the life. He has has a thing with the student / maid servant of the grandmother of his old girlfriend. And then the sort of high point of the movie, or the midpoint of the movie, is they uncover a huge Etruscan tomb with some very, very elaborate grave goods, including a giant statue of a goddess. Mm-hmm. And just when he's about to sort of get out of that lifestyle, he kind of tanks the deal for the rest of his buddies. Like Christy said, he kind of comes back to it at the end, leaves the sort of blossoming romance with Italia, and then is buried in a tomb.
Accidentally.
Essentially.
Or intentionally, depending, because it is Spartaco's crew that...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty suspicious of that.
Yeah. Very Italian once again. I don't know. The dirt just fell in.
Oh, dear.
Whatever shall we do with this giant excavate?
Right.
Right. Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah.
So should we start with Arthur, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of like that with Arthur, again, we first meet him on a train. He's just left jail. And I don't know, it's kind of mean. And
he has very little chill. He really like pops off at the hilt a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you can tell he's a very unhappy person.
Yeah. I can't remember when we learn he's an archaeologist. He's British. He's an archaeologist. Yeah. He speaks fairly good Italian from like as an American who speaks not really great Italian. I get what he's saying.
I like that they have bits where he kind of is like mumbly, or like there's other bits where they like correct his Italian.
Or uses the wrong endings or something. Yeah. Like it's not perfect, but like he's pretty he's pretty good.
It's the Italian of a guy who's, he's an expat who's been living in Italy for a while.
Yeah. And we learned that like he was probably picked up for antiquities dealing, is what it sounds like.
That's what he was in jail for. That's where like that first scene on the train, as we learn sort of at the end of the movie, that like everybody he's interacting with was a ghost, which I like because he makes a little allusion to one of the women in the train car with them looking like a wall painting.
Yeah.
Because she has that wall painting sort of nose
profile.
And so he seems to have been an archaeologist who has turned to tomb raiding
to antiquities because it probably makes more money. Now, not a lot more money, but it probably makes more money. Okay, so this is where the tie-in. So the paper that Elijah and I heard on this was given by a professor at Camus, and that professor's from Brigham Young University. And I have been learning a lot about the founder of the church, Joseph Smith. And interestingly enough, there is a court record of him as like a 13-year-old getting in trouble with the law because he was involved in treasure hunting in the 1800s. And the way that he performed treasure hunting was similar to what we saw Arthur doing to find these tombs, is he does dowsing. He'd also use glass or seeing stones and things like that. So that was actually how Joseph Smith started out before he got his first messages from God, if you will. Go listen to other Mormon historians talk about more of that. But I will say, like, there's a lot of archaeology involved in the start of the Mormon church, because another story is that, like, the way Joseph Smith translated the gold plates to found the Book of Mormon was he took these seeing stones, put it in a hat, and placed his face in the hat, and he translated golden plates that way. If you've seen South Park, you've seen South Park, that is how it is historically explained. The other fun story is he came across some guy selling Egyptian hieroglyphics that had been discovered. Okay. And he's like, I'm going to use my supernatural ability and connection to God to translate Egyptian hieroglyphics into another book for this religion.
Great.
What he didn't know at the time, because like information moves a lot more slowly, the Rosetta Stone had been found within recent few years. So he was translating a language he didn't think anyone would be able to translate.
Oh, that's so cute and funny.
Mhm.
And there are images of the hieroglyphics that he used to like do this document. It's not the Book of Mormon. It's another like another text associated with the religion. So like this weird practice using supernatural magical means to seek out antiquities and interpret them was very common in the 1800s, and it's something we've hinted at before in some of our discussions. It hasn't really disappeared from archaeology. Like that is still like a really huge element of it.
Well, yeah, there's always, like you said, archaeology has kind of always had like a little, like one foot in the occult, and like probably in like, like you said, Arthur, he uses dowsing rods to sort of find, but really what allows him to find these things is his connection to the dead. He's really like a medium, if anything. That's his, that's, I think, the connection right there, because archaeology is in effect a practice of communing with the dead. And well, that's one way to look at it. But Italia has that whole speech where she learns that they're tomb raiders, and she curses them all out and says like, these are for, like, human eyes aren't supposed to look at this. These are for the souls. Yeah. Right. This is not for us. And what they're doing is an inherently sort of, it's like violating the dead.
Yeah, which in Italy is a very weird, like, again, like this felt so realistic in its depiction of how the people of Italy interact with their ancient past. And like, so the first tomb that they find that Arthur finds, it's from this farmer who's just like, I swear there's something here. Yep. I've been, digging around here for decades, and it's like I keep finding little things. And that like that's the same story of like the site of Gange Vecchio. It's like the Baronessa and her brother would dig up different things, including human remains. And eventually they got archaeologists in, but it's really easy. It's probably easier to turn to the Tombarolo because what I loved about the setting of this is like everyone is poor. This is the Italian countryside. This is not the città, the city. That doesn't matter. Also, those dead people are not Christians. It's okay.
Yeah. I would say there's another element too that it isn't. Yeah, it's not necessarily sacrilegious or anything like that. And like I think it's all spelled out. Like one of the theses of this movie is that song. I also love that there's two musical interludes involving this like minstrel basically, who pretty much like spells out the kind of theme where he explains like, oh, these poor Tombarolos, here's Arthur's it's like this heroic ballad. And he has some line about like, who could judge these people, right? We're like working poor, like you can't really judge us, and the interesting idea I think that the movie kind of gets at is like exploitation of antiquity and the past and material cultures as a manifestation of economic inequality and hardships and poverty and things like that like people turn to these things as not to like say everything is capitalism's fault, but like it is a thing where like, poor people will exploit their own cultural history to sell to rich buyers on fancy boats.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very, very real and very much happens today, like in our backyards, in lots of places around the world. Like it's not an issue that is solely in the past or like just from, the little antique vision of the 80s that we saw. It's like, this is very much still a thing. And I think that's why I liked it so much, right? Is it really speaks to, I don't know, the way that we currently think about our past and the ways that we may or may not exploit it.
Yeah.
Especially as somebody who does dig up tombs, I like had a lot of feelings about.
Yeah. As someone who doesn't intentionally dig up tombs, like it was really interesting too, showing the different reactions of the Tombaroli they're like, that first tomb they break into is like, there's just a body. There's nothing on it. Not even a fibula. And I'm like, yeah, there is, but not the one you're thinking. But they're like, oh wait, no, the stuff's over here. Versus like when the children first see like them pulling out the skull, or the farmer sees them and he, does the Catholic cross thing. And like, there's such a strong reaction of they're dead. They don't need this stuff anymore. We're trying to change our fate. We are trying to be more than just a poor farmer.
Yeah, there's like the guy's like uncle or grandfather or whoever, where he walks in, he's like, you want to be like that guy? He's like his body and mind is addled from like a lifetime of labor.
Yeah.
And so like, we don't want to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the sad thing is the people most putting themselves at risk to basically give up their cultural heritage for profit. They profit the least from it. It's the
Yep.
sporticos
Yep.
and above who make them do all the risky stuff of getting the antiquities. And then why Sportico and that level matters is because they make the papers. They make the papers that make the museum curators feel okay about
Yep.
buying this object that just turned up because it was hiding so well in someone's private collection for centuries. Don't worry, we carbon dated that document. It's been around.
Yeah. I had a question that was sort of like in terms of like the period piece of it all. Like, I don't know, why do you think it was set? Like, because like Chrissy, you were saying, like a lot of this stuff could have happened yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, why do you think there was a choice to set this film in the 80s?
I have two ideas, but I didn't. Lige, did you have?
I think one thing I heard about this movie is that people were worried it would encourage, like, you know, people rooting around in their own backyards, because there are still so many places that you technically could do something like this in much of Europe, not just in Italy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think so much of the like illegal trade in ancient coins comes from Bulgaria, right? And places that maybe aren't on like big tourist maps, but still have an incredible backlog and a huge amount of material culture at their disposal. And so I think, I don't know, I feel like maybe they were trying to antiquate this type of activity as saying like, this was a thing that we used to do, that used to be available, and hopefully don't do it anymore.
And I feel like Etruscan tombs in particular, like if I remember from like my Italian archaeological history, that like there's a whole region like Cerveteri is also known as, which is a place where they have all these tombs, these hill tombs, and is also known as Banditaccia because it was famously like this was a hot spot for tomb raiders for decades. I have another question about the Etruscans, but I want to put a pin in that for a second.
So that was definitely like one thing that came to mind because again, it's like it's 40-year difference. And I think we had talked to David West Reynolds about this film, like because we knew it was on our radar and how like that was a concern. Like if this is romanticized in a certain way,
very much so.
Like again, it's like it pulled at my heart and it also broke my heart so many ways. The way the neck snap gets me every time.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So I think that was definitely a reason. The other reason I think, and I haven't like listened to the topic in a while, but this is about the period of time where legislation is more in place. So the reason why Sportico needed that head to disappear because she'd just given this amazing pitch of any of you could be this goddess. And the head is missing. And that's what allows us to imagine who could this be. And so I had pulled this book because I do recommend it's Chasing Aphrodite, and it deals with the Tombaroli at Morgantina and the huge antiquities trade that eventually tied to the Getty. So if this topic interests you, I highly recommend that book. I think there's a documentary as well in Italian, similar title. But this is kind of the period of time when there is a lot more, not just Italian legislation, but international legislation being put in place to try and like stop the antiquities dealings. And what has changed in the last 40 years is Italy's much more involved in terms of like the government. There's a huge state interest in controlling their own cultural heritage. So there was a huge investment in developing enforcement, basically. So like before, we were just seeing the cops who were like kind of like searching for the Tombaroli and be like, meh, kind of like they kind of know, but they can't, they're not trying that hard. Versus like, again, Chasing Aphrodite, it does this history as well. Like the first real investigations to not just catch the Tombaroli, but to catch the Sporticos and above, the paper trails that they were trying to find these dealers that were selling to museum curators and things like that. That really started to come about, I think, in that time period. So it's a good place to set it because there is more of a...
Yeah. It's a fulcrum point or a sort of a transition point in the way like this happens. That makes sense.
So that's what would be my guess overall for like, I think those are the two main reasons. to set it here. But also, again, like if you go to parts of Italy in the countryside, like I think season 2 of White Lotus also pointed this out. It's like all of these rich or like all of these wealthy or not wealthy these Italian families with these amazing villas, and they have no money. Like that is very much what it is like in the countryside. It's like you have these beautiful structures. I loved the like going to the train station.
Yeah.
And there's a group on Instagram called Tesori Abbandonati. And they go to different locations in Italy and just take pictures of abandoned buildings and stuff. And like
for English, that's abandoned treasures.
And so it's just like that idea of like timelessness almost.
Yeah. And but also like there also seems an emphasis on like, I don't know, decay. Like there is something I think in terms of like the way the settings, like you have Flora's villa, which is very much in this like decrepit state. Even like the places where they're finding these tombs, it's like next to some kind of like refining factory or inside an abandoned building. There was another one that escapes me, but like they're in these, it's like set, there's this backdrop constantly of like the, not modern, but I guess contemporary Italy that is a sort of in a state of like urban decay.
And I think that goes back to this. I think this movie does a really good job of presenting important ethical questions that anyone who does like cultural resource management grapples with is, at what point do we preserve the past at the expense of those living today? And I think even one of the Tombarolo, like they mentioned is like all of the people were robbing. No, is it Sportico? Like they talked about how like the people we're robbing from were kind of rich anyway, but Sportico's like, no, these are poor people stuff. And
well, no, somebody's complaining that it's like when they're having a handoff, I think, and then he's like, "This is all you got." At the vet clinic,
I loved that so much.
And they're like, "This is all you got." And they're like, "Hey, man, like they weren't all pharaohs or something."
They weren't all pharaohs. But the funny thing is that you know a lot of richer tombs that are more famous, especially Etruscan tombs, those were the elites of the ancient world. And how bad do we feel about robbing from the tombs of the upper class?
Is it ethical to rob a pharaoh even 5,000 years?
The Egyptians certainly had no problem with it. They did it for centuries before.
Yeah, but they were also not supposed to either, right? Like they had curses and all that good stuff.
Which just goes to show how long we've grappled with this question of, and like that's the thing. I think the Italia's storyline with Flora was really interesting because Flora's like, oh, I've taken her on, like she sucks at singing, but I'm giving her singing lessons and I get an in-house maid. But Italia actually kind of wins in the end because she's also hiding her 2 children there,
right?
Because it's such a huge villa that like she doesn't know.
Which is kind of wild.
And it's so interesting because like that's why the train station, I love that scene because I think Flora says like, oh, it belongs to nobody. And she's like, oh, really? And it's like, well, it belongs to everybody. It's public. And she's like, is it nobody or everybody? But then she kind of like holds on to that as this motto of like, these spaces are for nobody and they're for everybody. And I feel like we can look at the ancient past in the same way, right? Like these objects aren't necessarily particularly for anybody. And yet, like, is it for nobody or is it for that person that was buried with it? Or is it for everybody to enjoy and learn
Is it for the state, right? Like, is it, the state administers its own cultural antiquities. And then you're kind of like, well, like, the Italian government or whatever country's government should be able to say, but then that opens up a whole other, like, who does the state represent? But like, this is an archaeology talk, not a political theory talk. So,
it's what the British Museum does too, right? Like it's a free museum that you can travel to and see cultures from all around the world, which there's not a lot of places that can say that. Like you have this opportunity, and yet they stole a bunch of it.
And
a lot of those places would like their stuff back to share their own cultural history. So like it felt like such an ethical dilemma that like it doesn't matter if you're a tomb robber or a legit archaeologist, we grapple with these questions all the time. And I think one of my favorite scenes then was a result is like that last vision he has on the train with like the people he'd seen in the train car at the very beginning. And they just started asking him about the very specific objects that were removed from tombs. And it's like, I liked it because it was really interesting because it talked about how certain objects do have a personal meaning to us as individuals, and how might we feel if we were to lose that object.
Right. Yeah. How would you feel if your own grave or someone you knew's grave was robbed, in 5,000 years or in 2,000 years or in 200 years or something like that?
And I think it's also getting toward, I don't know, for me, it is even more, I think, of that ethical moral dilemma of treating human bodies as objects, and this very like objectification of the skull that he saw and they freaked out the kids. And sort of how do you kind of negotiate with, this was a person, this was an individual with a personality who had people they loved and people who loved them, who put them in a place that they thought was going to be forever. Technically, if you're putting somebody in a tomb, it's like, yep, there we go. Forever. And yeah, realizing that you have like torn that apart, how does that make you think of the other people in your life and the other people that I'm thinking of Benyamina, right? Who is also dead. And like, what does he sort of see in the graves when he knows that this person that he's searching for is dead? So yeah, the objectification of humans as pieces in that material culture, pieces of that history that we can exploit. Yeah. That's something that I think this dealt with in a really heartbreaking way, because I also really love that last scene where he's on the train and he's talking with everybody and she's asking about the little bell, like the little bell with a little bird on it. And it was really heartbreaking. And
I think, partly why I was watching this is like, I really want to be careful in saying like, this isn't an archaeology movie. Arthur was an archaeologist, and I would argue that his ability, if he'd been an archaeologist for a significant amount of time, like maybe he grew up with it, like we saw in The Dig. I'm blanking on that guy's name.
Ray Fiennes.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, his historical counterpart, who grew up digging, so he knew the dirt. And I would argue it's like what he's doing with the dowsing is not unlike doing survey work that an archaeologist does, of like you just walk in lines up and down and you examine the surface and you look for surface finds and things like that. It's like there is something to say that his skills as an archaeologist is translating into his ability to find these tombs. And so my question then, as I'm watching this, like if I was going to explain to someone the difference between a tombarolo and an archaeologist and like what is different, it would be that when they break into that first tomb and they look at the body and they're like, oh, there's nothing on it. There's nothing here worthwhile.
Yeah, no rings, no jewels, no necklaces.
And there's but then they do find the objects eventually, and they're just removing it without context. But like that's a whole nother thing. It's like, no, your bones say so much about who you were as a person, and the things left behind for you say so much about who you were as a person. Like you have a chance to learn about someone's life story, just a little bit, but like, when it's preserved pristine like that and there's no interest in that person's story, there's no interest in like the girl on the train being like, that was that little bell, like it meant so much to me. I think that's the difference, right? Like we do, like that's why we do it. If we have to take away the sacred aspect of the burials, we at least want to be able to like say something about their lives and possibly their deaths too. And like that's just not the case when you need to survive and sell these things. And I think that's pointed out really well, because when they are basically negotiating for how much money all of the vases they've collected, they know so many details, like archaeological details in terms of like when it would be dated, what were some unique figures. I kind of love the scene where he drinks from the
I know he has the
kylix. You get the eyeballs. Yeah, and they're doing, you see them, they're sifting out pottery shards or reconstructing pottery fragments. That's all stuff you might do or find, at any modern dig site today.
The knowledge isn't necessarily different from an archaeologist. Like archaeologists in Tombarolo have very similar knowledge sets.
Yeah, they know a lekithos from a cantharos, from a kylix.
They know the
where to find
styles,
things,
the dates.
what would be buried where, etc.
And what do you guys think? Why does Arthur ultimately throw the head off the boat?
I was going to say, well, it's too early because he was imitating Titanic, but that movie wouldn't come out for another like 10 to 20 years. But I was there the whole time he was holding that head, and I see him like, he's walking along the side of the boat. I'm like, oh no, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. He's going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. He has a crisis of faith, maybe. Like he is it his disillusionment with his lifestyle, with his friends. Because it kind of ironically, the person who benefits most from that exchange is Spartaco, right? Because she's like, that's one major loose end tied up.
Yep. And she can go and retrieve that head later when it's.
Yes, I was thinking, you just got to get some diving equipment.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering if he like felt haunted in some way, because we realize at some point that he is sort of seeing ghosts, and his visions are of Benjamina, who we now know is dead. And so if he was so freaked out when they decapitated the sculpture.
I was also had a physical reaction to that moment.
That was a real visceral kind of like just clean, just snapping that sculpture's head right off. Which
is in fact what they would have done. Like totally. That is what they did with statues from Morgantina, is like you have to get that out in a very tiny car trunk. It's going in pieces, and we can put it back together later. And you're just like, and it's true. Like so many statues are found broken anyway, but my God, it's like and it wasn't even a tomb they found. They found a shrine, a sanctuary, and it's perfectly preserved. It is a snapshot of time, sort of, in terms of all the votive offerings, a statue. And I think for me, how I read it is like he saw Benjamina in it.
Yep.
Because he's very focused on the face, and that's why it's so traumatic when the neck snaps all of a sudden, because it's like, I'm looking into her eyes again, and she's dead again. And and then it becomes, even his chasing of the fantastic, he's really just chasing after Benjamina, right?
Yeah.
He's not necessarily...
A classic, visions of your dead girlfriend kind of situation.
Classic, yes.
Just like another film we reviewed by one Francis Ford Coppola, Metropolis. A lot of dead girlfriend visions
Megalopolis.
in that one. Megalopolis, not Metropolis. Metropolis is a different film.
This was so much better than Megalopolis.
Speaking of film history, this is just a total, like, kind of, I don't know, maybe Easter eggy thing, but I want to ask. But the scene where they are lifting the sculpture out of, like, it's a shot of the crane. I mean, I think in terms of like a symbolically loaded shot, it's like you have the dock worker craning the sculpture out, putting it into the crate, filling it with soccer balls, basically, with Italian-themed soccer balls to pad it and disguise it. But I was getting flashbacks. I don't know if it was intentional, but I was getting a sort of visual callback to the beginning of La Dolce Vita, the Fellini film, where the very first shot of the film is a helicopter flying into Rome with a statue of Jesus, like, suspended below it. So I don't know if that was like a Fellini reference, or if this just like...
I think there are a few Fellini references, actually.
I think there are too. I think that was actually presented in the paper that we listened to.
Yeah.
Then I feel good about my observation.
Well done, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I could, it does seem like it is kind of like La Strada-esque or something, like all the stuff with the Tombaroli and like all their hangout spots. That definitely feels very like early Fellini.
And again, it's like the statue is really cool, and like we have a very visceral reaction to it being broken, and then they went for the lion cat, and I'm like, no,
Panther. I was like, nope.
Panther, thank you. Yeah, I'm like, not the cat. And luckily they didn't get the cat, but yeah, the statue's cool. All of those votive offerings, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited, because again, like those are dedications from individuals and things like that. Like, I don't know, I was nerding out so hard, but it is, I mean, that's what sells big, right? In antiquities are these statues. And I think maybe we should talk about Spartaco a bit more, because I think that's why her pitch was so interesting to me. Like, what?
Yeah. It's got one of the two like fourth wall break moments, right? Where like a character kind of looks directly into the camera and like talks right at the audience about something.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about it in that way, because the other one who does that is her niece, Melody, who breaks the fourth wall to tell us about how like life in Italy was better under the Etruscans because it was partially ruled by women. That's not quite true. It was probably more egalitarian than other ancient societies, but it wasn't being ruled by women either.
I was going to ask also about like the sort of romanticization or even fantasizing about Etruscans as like a kind of alternate Italian history where so much of Italian history is dominated by Rome, both the sort of ancient empire, but also like the city. And, you know, you get to modern Italy today and Rome's influence on other parts of disparate parts of Italy. But this option of like these other kinds of Italian identities in history, right? Like Etruscans or, you know, Oscans or Faliscans or Sicils or whoever, or like these other peoples that weren't Roman, weren't part of the sort of Latin, the Latin world, this like alternate culture that they have a connection to.
Yeah. Lej, do you have like particular thoughts on that? Because it was making me think of Romulus season 1 too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think, I don't know, it seems very like the hipsters like version, right? Of like, no, I don't want the Roman Empire. I want the better, less known,
the alternative ancient empire. You know, is the Etruscans.
And I think, so much of the Etruscan history gets like subsumed into Rome eventually, and like we still don't necessarily know how to read all of our Etruscan inscriptions, correct?
Yeah, I think
things have changed in the last few years.
I've only looked into it a little bit. Like they use the Greek alphabet usually. So and there's also a famous like mummy wrap that had a bunch of Etruscan on it. So like I think we have an incomplete picture of the language. Like we have a lexicon, but not enough to like build out the full grammar and things like that.
There's something still so, I think, like desirable about something that we don't fully understand still.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like at this point, and when we know so much about the ancient world, this is something we still don't quite have all the information for, and likely never will, because there's just not enough.
Right.
There's a bit of fill in the blank potential with them.
It's an alternative history, an alternative timeline.
Yeah. And the Etruscans were also one of those folks who called themselves autochthonous, right? Like they, like in their own history, said that they came from this land, like from Italy, that they didn't migrate from anywhere else, which is, of course, not necessarily true. Everybody migrated from somewhere else, like eventually, but having that like piece in their own history that they talked about for themselves, I think is also really intriguing and could have a very like nationalistic kind of bent that I think a lot of the Roman Empire stuff does take up all the air in the room when we think about that.
To speak to like modern Italian kind of, right, of like your own local identity versus a sort of pan-Italic identity, which is very much rooted in Rome.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think there's also, we have to acknowledge like there was a trend in archaeology to look at these older cultures that were adjacent to what would be later dominant cultures like the Minoans, like the Mayans, where a lot of initial writing on those cultures, like they were more matriarchal, they were more pacifist, they were more feminine in some ways than to be dominated by these very patriarchal societies. So it's also speaking to like a supposedly natural progression of like why patriarchy takes over eventually. And these cultures don't survive because they were just too peace loving.
Yeah.
Fools.
Gross.
But we see that with like the story of Rome, right? Like Rome was made up of all of these wayward men, right? Who eventually needed wives, so they started going and conquering the Sabines and like all of this.
Gosh, yeah.
Because it was just a manly play.
I'm thinking just in a broader sense, like so many of our Greek ceramics come from Etruscan tombs, right? Like, so the Etruscans had this really extensive trade network that they thought Greek ceramics were really cool, and there's some evidence that Greeks produced specifically for an Etruscan market, because there's some that have been found that have just like nonsense words on them because they knew the Etruscans liked the Greek letters. They were like, yeah, it doesn't say shit, but enjoy. And so, so many of those things that they're pulling out of the Etruscan tombs are even older Greek pieces,
Yep.
which is, creating a much bigger puzzle piece to fit into the wider Mediterranean world, which is why I think, the Etruscans in general are just really cool.
Yeah. I remember getting asked that question for my MA, like, so I was looking at vase painting images of Oedipus and the Sphinx, and how I was arguing that depiction of a hero monster dynamic differed from like Theseus chasing Medea or like fighting the centaurs or something like that, which we've all, for a while, the scholarship is like, oh, that's the Greeks thinking of themselves as the Greek hero versus the Persian other. And it's like an aggressive other. But Oedipus versus the Sphinx is like, he's sitting down, he's in traveler's garb, he's not a soldier, and he's, simply going to answer a question and defeat the Sphinx. So I was arguing it's like, that was more of a discussion of the relationship of how Greece related to Egypt and Egypt's role in the Persian Wars. And the question got asked is like, yeah, but most of these paintings I'm looking at are in Etruscan tombs. So like, does that matter? Does that change how we should read those images if it was made for an audience that had nothing to do with the Persian War to begin with? And I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. I think like what a lot of people argue is that why so much of the pottery from Greece ended up in the Etruscan tombs is because they had this shared cultural practice of feasting and the symposium. Like that was very similar. So like it could have just been emulating more of the function of the objects, and you can make up your own stories about the pictures, but that doesn't, that's the question of like, but the artist could have a completely different meaning than how it was received by the paying audience. So,
which is very Spartaco of you, right? To bring up, like, how do we see ourselves in the ancient?
Bad person, but I loved her.
The past is a mirror for us to project ourselves into. But.
Yes, exactly.
Is that not what we do on our podcast?
Yes, absolutely.
The central thesis is exploring how we do that, but but we're getting off track because we were talking about the fourth wall breaks. The look at camera moments. One being about the sort of fantasizing about the Etruscan past, the other being Spartaco's like sales pitch, I guess, for the sculpture. Like what to take of the part where like these very pointed moments where someone just looks directly down the barrel of the lens and is like talking to you, the audience. I don't know. It almost felt like incriminating in a way. Like I'm not sure. Like it reminded me a little bit of like the end of Wolf of Wall Street, where he's like you have the rapt audience, eating up whatever Jordan Belfort is selling, and then like it's like that's you.
What did she say?
This is what you look like.
How do we estimate the inestimable? Let us begin. Like you're and that is a question archaeologists will get sometimes. Is like people, if you get coins or something, it's like, oh well, how much is that worth? And like they mean monetarily, and we mean not monetarily. And I think it was also pointed out, like when it talks about like seeing yourself in the statue, she stands in front of the projector so that like her head
there.
I for the longest time thought that she was like the dead girlfriend, like she had just like assumed a new identity and reinvented herself, but that was a mistake. I was just sort of being misled.
When they ended up at the pet clinic thing, and like, cause the fencing person basically, right? Like who actually sells these objects. And it's like, I have a feeling Spartaco is going to be a woman, and I'm going to be so excited when that happens.
I mean, it's also funny that she takes the moniker Spartacus, right? That she's, the famous like freedom fighter, liberator, a liberatory sort of icon.
She's also ambiguous in terms of like, you're not actually necessarily sure what her heritage is. And the same with Melody, right? Because like Melody is speaking a blend of French and Italian when she first comes across the Tombaroli. And then like... Yeah,
she like some kind of like pan-European royalty or something like that.
Yeah, and Spartaco's much like got some German going, got some English, something other, an amalgam from like the actual culture being represented and sold. And I think, going back to what you were saying earlier, Colin, there's also a distinction between when we think about artifacts as artwork, because I've taken, Greek art and Roman art. And it is very informative. It is such a different experience of how we talk about that same material as archaeologists.
Yes.
And that, to me, that's also like how I experience the Parthenon marbles. Like if you go to the Acropolis Museum and experience like how they've created that space to help you experience what the Parthenon marbles would be like, and then you go to the British Museum and actually see the Parthenon marbles, like that distinction is made of like, this is how it would look like on a temple if you were walking up into the city. This is how we display it as an art piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a different experience. And I think that's something interesting to think about as those customers being museum curators, but a large number of people who also buy illegal antiquities have their own personal collections, and who gets to look at that? I think she talks about how much would people pay thousands, millions, billions to see these objects. And when you have your own personal collection, who of the privileged few get to go and see those objects ever?
I want to just backtrack just a little bit to not get off Spartaco a bit and talking about her sort of ambiguous origin, for lack of a better word. And another sort of part where the maybe subtext becomes text, but where she's arguing with the Tombaroli, or she makes some point with Arthur, where it's like, look, you're like me, right? We're fancy elites. These guys are just, country hicks or whatever. And then they get into the argument, and then the argument literally devolves into them just hissing at each other, basically, or just growling and roaring. And it's I
love that too. Actually. It's weird, but I liked it.
That these artifacts, these objects are this friction point of class conflict between the low class grave robbers and the high class grave robbers.
Right.
And the way they're fighting over these bones.
Well, and I think that's why Arthur is targeted by Spartaco's crew at the end of the movie, is because he has legitimacy as both an archaeologist and as a Brit. And so he could have walked into that room and explained in English as an archaeologist why this head is from this. And hey, look, you see that neck break? That's fresh and clean. And you know why that happens? Tombaroli. Versus, I think Spartaco said something, it's who's going to believe me? Me or you guys? Arthur's the only one who could actually bring the legitimacy of the statue into question. And I think that was played in another way as well, that was more subtle, is Flora's family and Flora. They very much read as Northern Italian in terms of their physical appearance. Versus most of the Tombaroli are darker skinned. They would probably more be considered from Southern Italian. And there is this kind of a race class distinction between Northern and Southern Italy that I think was also kind of playing into this dynamic of the haves and have-nots in different ways. So
or just the way they talk about Italia. As all the daughters, Flora's daughters come in, they're like, oh, that girl, she's just a thief, I don't trust her. But then also I think another great kind of mirroring, maybe this movie should be called the Chiasma, not the Chimera, but that's my pitch. But where they're talking to Flora and we got to move you out of this house. And then one of her daughters is like, can I have this? You don't use it anymore.
Yeah, right.
And I was there it is. Right. That's maybe the scene that I think there's a bunch of scenes that maybe encapsulate this film, but that to me is that's a microcosm of this film in a single moment where her daughter being like, you don't need this lamp anymore. Can I have it?
Yep.
And then wanting to get her out of the old house and do something else with it. But I was like, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah. Because they also say we're going to sell everything in here. We want to move you out to a nursing home. It'll be so nice. You'll have friends, but we're going to sell everything in this decrepit tomb that you've been
what are they doing if not exploiting or profiteering off of their own legacy or history or anything like that, right? Selling.
I love that.
I mean, I think the movie is kind of being looting your trust consume. It's just selling off all your grandma's shit.
Yep.
Well, she's still alive too.
She's still alive.
And I think that's why I loved her response was because they're bad mouthing Italia and be like, she's a thief. She had 2 children from you. I was and one of them asked her, it's how does that make you feel? And my whole thing is girl, lady, you didn't even know they were in the house. It's just how big it was. And it was obviously a very useful setup. And what is upsetting is that the daughters hinted at this, right? It's like, I think they joked is like, mom always finds a way to get a maid or gets to free labor. And what is more upsetting is like, oh, is it because Italia exploited her in turn for housing? And her response was vecchia, of just like, I feel old. And I'm like, that is so like, what an interesting response to be like.
Well, I think it's like, I feel old, right? Like, I feel like I'm already in my grave because you guys are all already fighting over all of my stuff and people are already trying to exploit me. So I'm like that close to being a skeleton in the ground.
I don't want to overstate the metaphor or the analogy or run too far with it, but I am really kind of attracted to this idea as like Flora as like a like living representative of like she is a sort of manifestation of the Etruscan tombs or something like that. And
Totally.
it's a mirror of like what's happening, like even like her relationship with Arthur, her relationship with her children, her relationship with Italia, all of these accesses we just talked about, right? The class conflict, the family drama, the money and wealth and all of that stuff. Like these two lines are parallel to one another, which again, the movie should have maybe been called the chiasma, but
they subtly brought gender into it too, right? Like I had suspicions Spartaco after a while was going to be a woman, but like that was kind of, that's a twist. But also it's just like all the daughters comment is like, we don't get to smoke in the house. Like
the favoritism for Arthur, I like when Arthur comes back to Flora, like it's like the sun shines from his ass.
And it's just because he's dating like
he dated
her daughter, like her missing granddaughter. I'm not sure which it was exactly.
Yeah, I'm very curious. We never get to see or hear, but like, are the other daughters like? I mean, they have children and stuff, so like presumably were married or are married, but like we never get to see any of the other guys in this family. So like, you know, why Arthur? I mean, how Arthur is so special because he's a British archaeologist, but
he's a British archaeologist, but also I would argue famously that Italian men love their Italian mothers. If all that Flora had was daughters, but this is an actual like daughter's son coming and like treating her like a mother, like that's probably how he's exploiting her for the most part, right? Is just he's filling a role that Flora doesn't really have otherwise.
Yeah, he just comes to like use her house for extra storage and raid her first aid kit and just kind of pop in and out.
Drink the coffee.
I mean, I don't know why he just doesn't live compared to like having his cabin. But then I guess that's where all the antiquities stuff is happening. But
also, I feel like living with Flora might get a little straining sometimes. But
I feel like that's not.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to live with my dead ex's grandmother full time. That seems like
it's like you're so thin. Go get some biscotti. Go. I'm like, I love her so much.
But that villa, on the other hand, living in that villa.
I mean, and that's interesting too, right? The perspective of poverty. Italia's looking at that place. Italia's looking at Arthur's place and like, this is nice. This is nice what you've done here when you have nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll hide my two children in the decrepit villa and wheelchair around a lady who makes fun of my singing loudly behind my back. Why not?
To be fair, though, also, I was like, Italia really not great at singing, but
no.
But I feel like she was never actually trying to be a singer, right? Like she was there for the house.
I have another moment that was really fun, and it was earlier on. It was the Epiphany Festival.
Yes. Yeah. And they're all dressed up as La Befana, and they all are witches just running down the...
It really took me a minute. I was like, I wonder if there's like any like cross-dressers that are ostracized from the village. Like that was initially where my mind went. I'm like, oh no, it's a festival.
It's just the
this
Epiphany.
Makes so much more sense.
I genuinely thought for like a hot second, I just thought he was like, the grave robbers were also just like the bohemian crowd of like all, every kind of alternative. And then I was like, oh no, this is just for this one feast. Although in a sense, maybe he kind of was.
Well, and I think that this is maybe one of the things we can touch on with some of the other imagery is like, La Befana as part of Epiphany is really interesting because, she's a witch, but she's a Santa Claus, basically.
She's a Santa Claus, yeah.
And they've pointed out that, like, the celebration of Epiphany, 12 days after Christmas, it's meant to be, like, kind of meant to promote harvest and good fortune for the rest of the year to come up. That's why it's 12 days after 12 months, 12 days. And it's also tied to, like, supposedly biblically 12 days after Jesus Christ was born is when the 3 wise men came and brought gifts. And it's this festival that is just an amalgamation of all these different belief systems that have existed in Italy over time.
Yeah.
That it's a really fun and interesting way, especially to kind of still also introduce us into this more supernatural aspect that Arthur is bringing to it as well. Also, it's like, I've been to festivals, not like I haven't been to Epiphany, but it's like I've been to like local festivals. The live concert they're at, it's just the plastic chairs out in the middle of nowhere. Elijah and I have been one of those together.
I was like, I have been in that plastic chair. Yes.
Yeah, I have. With my beer.
Yes.
Enjoying everything. Beer or wine, depending, but still. And I think what was interesting was like what was so romanticizing about the film wasn't like finding the cool archaeology stuff, but that was definitely cool. It's like I loved it because that's what I loved. It's like I know Flora. I know that town gathering. I know those old buildings that's like maybe you don't step over there. Maybe you put a pot out for the water. Like it's just so real to like the experience of living and working in those spaces.
Sure.
Not like, I think the only time we've talked about it before, David West Reynolds, about Indiana Jones having that moment of discovery. I felt like I had so much more of like, I have lived and experienced this as an archaeologist, and this has nothing to do with archaeology, but it is what archaeology, it's what being with people and learning about each other's past and cultures is actually all about. And I love it.
Well said. Yeah. I'm thinking of when they have like a big pot of pasta and he's like also putting together a little lekathos or something. And there's like a pasta right next to him. And I'm like, I have been at that table, right? Yeah. Where we're trying to eat, but I'm also trying to work. And it's like you have this sort of weird liminal space of, it's like summer camp, right? Yeah. Being on an archaeological dig is a little bit like summer camp. Everybody's kind of thrown together. And yeah, you do have that learning aspect.
I just also love the energy of the Tombaroli of just like when he brings him back, he picks him up from the train station. He's like, just take me home. And then he like takes him up to the square where everybody's hanging out. They're like, oh, it's Arthur. And he's like, no. And everybody just gets into the car and the whole like,
the drive there too. He's weaving back and forth. He's starting and stopping. I'm like, I have been in that car.
the ethics of what they're doing aside, these guys seem like a pretty fun hang.
Yes.
100%. Oh, it's just so good. It made me so happy.
They're having beach parties. It's great.
Yeah. And like for it kind of being, I don't know, maybe that's why I like this movie again. Because it's like, obviously life is really hard for everyone. Yeah. And like, it's kind of dark. You're missing with a daughter who's missing or dead.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for a movie with a heavy dose of like magical realism, like it is also like got a heavy dose of reality in it.
Definitely. Yeah.
And maybe that's what I need right now, because it's like that's what The Return was doing for me. It's like it's giving me life, even though this is like a kind of terrible thing to be happening right now. But like, I don't know, the space of it all. Okay, so the other symbols I wanted to point out. The paper we listened to was more of a discussion of like Arthur and Benamina as being kind of an Orpheus Eurydice story. Yep. So that was kind of an interesting take. Yeah. But there's also like obviously a lot of Ariadne and thread, or maybe more fate would be the better way to think about it. Initially, I was thinking of like the yarn thread being left in the labyrinth. But if we think about how the thread ends underground, and then the very ending, she pulls up and it snaps.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my sort of general read on it is to not think of it in terms of like discrete stories of like, and like try to like connect the dots and like do the Pepe Sylvia board of like, all these sort of strings connect, but like just to think of it as like one big soup, that like there is this kind of box or this like just general sort of soup of imagery from classical antiquity that just is going to percolate and permeate. And it's not going to necessarily be like one-to-one or discrete, but it's all in there. But like, yeah, like you're saying, like threads ties into different stories, right? Journeys to the underworld or from the underworld. visitations by ghosts. This is all part of the like toolbox of like
definitely
classical imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was also thinking about the canvas paper. He talked about the phrasing of like, it's not for human eyes, it's for the soul's eyes, or it's like not for the living to look at, it's for the dead to look at. And I think, that has some tie-in to the Orpheus and Eurydice story, because something that you're not supposed to look at and perceive.
And there's an emphasis made on eyes at one point too, because he's saying
all
eyes
throughout,
incorrectly. Right? Yeah,
we've got he keeps saying eyes wrong. We've got the times where Melody and Spartaco look into the camera with their eyes. I want to say like a lot of the flashbacks of Benjamina are very like eye focused. We've got the Cantharos where he drinks out of the cup and the eyes are sort of framing.
Well, and the statue head eyes, right? Like
I feel like a lot of the focus is the eyes. Yeah,
a lot of that.
Yeah, an emphasis on looking and visuality, which I mean makes sense also for dealing with film as a medium, right? It's all about vision and expectation and gaze and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it's working with a lot of great mythical themes.
They're cursing each other. They're giving
they do that.
I'm gesturing with my hands for listeners who are at home.
I want to watch the Italian hand sign lesson over and over and over again. I knew some of those. I actually knew some of those. I'm like, I need the refresher. Italia, please be my personal instructor in the Italian hand sign.
Oh, there are some great ones. I'm trying to run through them now of all the like the swindler. Nothing. I
always love the
listeners at home.
We're making so many Italian hand signs, and that is not helpful.
Our group chat to one another was a lot of
a lot of
the I want gesture.
Let's see. I think we've talked about the majority.
Yeah, I think we've hit on most of the things I've wanted to say. Oh, no, well, maybe cut this out. But like Pierrot's whole thing about like inspecting the hole a woman leaves after she's peed in the ground.
Funny.
I haven't thought to like what that means, but I'm also like, that's men who don't understand female anatomy. So.
I'm assuming it's some sort of like pelvic muscle.
Yes,
strength?
That's where I assumed that
makes more sense than assuming that the urethra and the vagina are the same thing.
But yeah, the lesson being that if a woman pees in the sand and leaves a perfectly round hole, then she's a keeper.
That's deep. It must go deep.
Yes, she's got a strong stream.
I love what he called her, though, an ornament of nature. And I'm like, oh, yeah, hit me with that Italian any day. Oh, dear.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm looking back over my note. Oh, I want to call out the also Pirro, maybe MVP of this movie, played by Vincenzo Nemolato, but his apotropaic phallus that he wears. That's his little good luck charm, which if you look closely, it's a penis with wings.
Yep.
Well, I love trying to explaining it to the cop who's like, do you know what that means? My apotropaic phallus?
Yeah, I know what tropical is.
So good.
Like, I think that was an indication of like, this is the period, like transitional period where like the Ministry of Culture, like it hadn't really fully formed yet. Like they're just starting to develop. And so like, yeah, the cops aren't really, and that's the thing. It was like, right. All of them are local. So it's like, yeah, we all have got those little trinkets we found over the years. So like the little heirlooms that get passed along the family. So his story of like, oh, well, his father gave it to my father. And yeah, it's a good luck charm. And
that's probably true.
Probably true, actually. Yeah. I guess my question to you guys is, people not well versed in our fields, how do we think they would enjoy this film?
Well, according to Wikipedia, they did. At least the critics enjoyed it. So I think it was critically well received. I'm not sure in terms of, I'm on the wiki right now. I can actually just see. It opened in North America, 3 theaters opening weekend. So that, pretty small, grossed $44,000, 1 million across North America as of September 2024, 4 million worldwide. So worldwide total of 5.2 million.
It has 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. So it's been critically well received. I don't know in terms of like was this a financial success? It seems like a smaller production.
Yeah.
And also it's one of those like, co-funded by various cultural ministries and art and institutes and things like that. So,
because I'm a person who doesn't necessarily consider myself an enjoyer of
like
fine
art house
films or anything like that, art house films and things like that.
A cinebro.
I love my animation. What can I say? But I immensely enjoyed that, but I'm having a really difficult time teasing out if that is because like I've lived this and like it feels nostalgic and homey to me because of that, and that allowed me to enjoy it more versus like if someone barely knows archaeology or
I do see how some people could think it's boring because it is that slow, very intense narrative storytelling. But I also think that if you're going to watch this movie, if you go out of your way and you like read the synopsis and you're like, yes, that is something I want to watch, I feel like you would enjoy it. Even if you're not like a big archaeologist.
Yeah, I think if you're in the film circle that you would seek this movie out and find it, then you would probably enjoy it.
Because I do think it has so many of those like big human related topics that we can all grab onto, whether or not we have actually dug up Etruscan tombs.
I think the other part that I liked about it, and I think Elijah, you said this earlier about how like digs are like a liminal space, and that this film, this magical realism is also very much of a liminal space. And I think that's what I've tried to hint at in the past. Like I've tried to explain how archaeology has a supernatural element, or like archaeologists can be superstitious. And I don't like mean like what we would think of as overly superstitious, but like you have this weird sense of connection to the dead and a responsibility to the dead that it feels profound in some ways, like when you experience that. And I think this film did it took it further and made it a little bit more superstitious.
Sure.
But I feel like this was the film that best got at that, what I was trying to kept saying experience with that. I think that's the other reason I really liked it and why I think this is not an archaeology movie that best represents what it feels like to be an archaeologist sometimes. Like,
I like the words that you said. You said responsibility and profound. And I think those are two things that I would use to describe both this movie and like parts of this movie, I guess, like that feeling of pull of responsibility towards something, but also actually working in archaeology. So that does make a lot of sense to me, Christy.
I would use the words apotropaic and phallus.
Thank you, Colin. Yes, thank you. Perfect.
But I think it's a well-made movie. So it's good with good performances and good direction and good art direction and just kind of checks all the boxes. So if you like movies, go watch this one.
Big thumbs up. Big 5 shovels.
We haven't figured out what our rating system is going to be.
This one is a solid excavator.
Or trowels. That's pretty good. Certified excavator.
Certified excavator.
Approved from the cultural ministry to excavate. And that, should we wrap it up?
I think so.
Let's.
Alrighty.
All right. Special thanks to all you listeners. We could not produce episodes like this without your support. That being said, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you like what you hear. You can find all our episodes at moviewedig.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more about our upcoming plans and episode releases, be sure to follow us on social media, where you can find us under some variation of the handle at Movies We Dig. Ciao and arrivederci.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
This show is produced and edited by your hosts, Colin McCormick and Christy Vogler. Movies We Dig is part of the Memory Collective, a group of creators and educators dedicated to sharing knowledge that is accessible, contextualized, socially conscious, and inclusive. To find more from the Memory Collective, visit collectivemem.com.